Welcome to Chosen by Love, where fate brings hearts together in the most unexpected ways. Subscribe and join our growing family of story lovers. Tell us where you're watching from, and let's begin today's journey. Sometimes the biggest mistake of your life turns out to be the reason your life finally changes. The cold October wind swept through downtown Seattle, rattling the orange leaves that skittered across the sidewalk like tiny racing boats. Sienna Hart tightened her grip on the worn leather folder tucked beneath her arm and glanced at the time glowing on her phone screen. 8:41 a.m. Her interview started at 9 sharp. 20 minutes. 20 minutes stood between her and what felt like her last chance. She quickened her pace, weaving through commuters carrying coffee cups and briefcases, their eyes fixed ahead, everyone chasing something.
À promotion.
A deadline. Paycheck. Sienna understood that feeling better than most. 3 months ago, the nonprofit where she worked had shut down unexpectedly. Since then, rejection emails had become a regular part of her mornings. Rent was overdue. Her aging Honda needed repairs she could not afford. And her savings account looked more like a countdown timer than a safety net. Today's interview at Alder & Rowe Consulting was different. It offered health insurance, stability, and enough income to finally breathe again. She had spent days preparing. She had researched the company, practiced answers in front of her bathroom mirror, and ironed her navy blazer twice the night before. This interview mattered. More than she wanted to admit. The crosswalk signal changed. Sienna stepped forward with the crowd, mentally reviewing talking points when a small voice drifted through the noise around her. "Excuse me." She barely noticed it. The city was full of voices. Then it came again. Softer. "Excuse me, miss?" Something in the tone made her stop. She turned. Sitting alone on a stone bench beside the fountain was a little girl, no older than 8. Blonde hair framed her pale face beneath a knit blue hat. A small backpack rested beside her. She looked clean, well cared for, but completely alone. Sienna glanced around. Instinctively. No parent nearby. No adult searching. No one paying attention. The little girl looked directly at her. "Can you help me?" Sienna's chest tightened. She checked her phone again. 8:42. 18 minutes. "Are you okay?" she asked, stepping closer. The girl nodded uncertainly, then shook her head. "I'm not sure." The answer was so honest it caught Sienna off guard. She crouched beside the bench. "What's your name?" "Maisie."
Maisia. I'm Shenna.
The girl twisted her fingers together nervously. "I think somebody is following me." The words landed heavier than they should have. Sienna immediately looked around the plaza. Office workers hurried past. A delivery truck rolled through the intersection. A man walked his dog across the street. Nothing seemed unusual. "What do you mean?" she asked gently. Maisie lowered her voice. "I saw the same people twice this morning." Sienna felt a flicker of concern but kept her expression calm. "Where's your family?" "I got separated." "Do you know your parents' phone numbers?" Maisie hesitated. "I know my dad's assistant's number." Not her father's. Her assistant's. Strange. Before Sienna could ask more, her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Job interview, 9 a.m. Her stomach twisted. She looked toward the glass tower visible 3 blocks away. She could still make it. If she left now, if she walked away, most people probably would. She didn't know this child. She had responsibilities, bills, a future hanging by a thread. Yet every time she looked at Maisie's face, she saw fear hidden beneath courage. The kind children try so hard to conceal. "Did someone tell you to wait here?" Sienna asked. "No." "How long have you been alone?" "Maybe an hour." "An hour." The answer settled the question before Sienna could argue with herself. No child should be alone for an hour in the middle of a city, especially one who looked this worried. She released a slow breath. "Okay," she said softly. "We're going to figure this out together." Relief flooded Maisie's eyes so quickly it almost hurt to see. "Really? Really?" Sienna silenced her phone and slipped it into her pocket. Somewhere nearby, a church bell rang the quarter hour. The interview was getting closer. The opportunity she had fought for was slipping away minute by minute. But standing up and walking away no longer felt like an option. Not after seeing that look. Not after hearing that voice. Maisie offered a tiny smile, the first one since Sienna arrived. Thank you. Sienna smiled back, unaware that this simple decision, this one unexpected moment beside a fountain on an ordinary October morning, was about to change both of their lives forever. Sienna guided Maisie away from the fountain and toward a small coffee shop across the street where they could sit somewhere warm and visible while figuring out what to do next. The bell above the door chimed softly as they entered. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon filled the air. For a brief moment, everything felt normal again. Almost. Sienna ordered a hot chocolate for Maisie and a small black coffee for herself, mostly because it was the cheapest thing on the menu. As they settled into a table near the front window, she pulled out her phone. The interview reminder still glowed on the screen. 8:51. 9 minutes. Her stomach sank. She imagined the hiring manager glancing at a conference room clock. She imagined another candidate sitting down in her place. Another opportunity disappearing. Yet every time she looked up, she saw Maisie sitting quietly across from her, clutching the warm paper cup with both hands. The little girl looked relieved simply not to be alone anymore. Sienna forced herself to focus. Do you remember where you got separated from your family? She asked gently. Maisie nodded. Near the Science Museum. And you came all the way here by yourself? I kept walking because I thought someone was following me. Sienna studied her carefully. Children sometimes misunderstand situations, but there was something about the way Maisie spoke. Calm. Certain. Not dramatic. Can you tell me about these people? Maisie glanced toward the window before answering. Maybe I am wrong. That is okay. I just kept seeing the same dark SUV. Sienna felt a small chill despite the warm room. Before she could ask another question, her phone started ringing. The screen displayed Alder and Rowe Consulting. Her heart jumped. For one hopeful second she thought they might be calling to confirm directions or something equally simple. She answered immediately. Hello, this is Sienna Hart. The voice on the other end was professional and polite. Ms. Hart, we are looking forward to meeting you this morning. We noticed you have not arrived yet. Sienna closed her eyes briefly. There it was. The moment she had feared. She looked at Maisie. The child offered a small uncertain smile, completely unaware of what this call meant. Sienna swallowed hard. I am very sorry, she said. An unexpected situation came up. There was a short pause. Will you still be able to attend? Through the window, Sienna watched busy pedestrians moving through the city. She could leave now. She could tell herself someone else would help. She could convince herself it was not her responsibility. But the answer was already in her heart. No, she said quietly. I do not think I can. The disappointment in the representative's voice was impossible to miss. We understand. Thank you for letting us know. The call ended. Just like that. Weeks of preparation vanished in less than 30 seconds. Sienna slowly lowered the phone. For a moment she simply stared at the dark screen. Then she slipped it back into her pocket and forced a smile. Everything okay? Maisie asked. Sienna looked at the little girl and nodded. Yes. We will figure things out. She was not sure whether she meant the situation or her own life. Maybe both. Maisie seemed satisfied with the answer. She took another sip of hot chocolate before reaching into her backpack. Can I show you something? She asked. Of course. The girl carefully removed a silver pendant hanging from a delicate chain. It was shaped like a small star. Even in the soft coffee shop lighting it shimmered. My mom gave this to me before she died, Maisie said quietly. The words instantly softened Sienna's expression. It is beautiful. Maisie wrapped her fingers around it. She said, whenever I get scared, I should remember that stars help people find their way home. Sienna felt something tighten in her chest. Your mom sounds very wise. Maisie smiled sadly. Before either of them could say more, movement outside the window caught Sienna's attention. A dark SUV rolled slowly past the coffee shop. Then another. They continued down the street without stopping. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was a coincidence. But when she looked back at Maisie, the little girl had gone completely still. Her eyes were fixed on the vehicles disappearing around the corner. And for the first time that morning, Sienna realized this situation might be far bigger than a lost child and a missed interview. Maisie continued staring through the coffee shop window long after the SUVs disappeared from view. Her small fingers tightened around the silver star pendant hanging from her neck. Sienna noticed the change immediately. Just a few minutes earlier, the girl had been talking about her mother. Now she looked like she was somewhere else entirely. "Hey," Sienna said gently. "Do you want to tell me what you are thinking?" Maisie hesitated before answering. "My dad always tells me not to panic." "That sounds like good advice. He says when people panic, they stop seeing what is right in front of them." Sienna smiled faintly. "Your dad sounds pretty smart." A tiny smile appeared on Maisie's face. "He thinks he is." The answer earned a soft laugh from both of them. The tension eased slightly. Sienna glanced at the clock above the counter. 9:23. Her interview had already started without her. There was no point thinking about it anymore. What was done. Right now this child needed help. "Let us try calling that assistant," she suggested. Maisie nodded. She carefully recited the number from memory while Sienna entered it into her phone. The call connected almost immediately. Before anyone could speak, an automated message informed her that the line was currently overloaded and unable to accept additional calls. Then the connection ended. Sienna frowned. "That is strange." "She is always answering her phone," Maisie said. "Always." Sienna tried again. Same result. Outside, clouds drifted across the Seattle skyline, dimming the morning light. The city seemed quieter somehow, as if everyone was holding their breath. "Maybe we should go somewhere safer," Sienna said. "Safer? Somewhere public. Somewhere with lots of people." Maisie immediately nodded. "I know a place." 20 minutes later they stepped inside the downtown public library. The massive building buzzed with quiet activity. Students studied at long tables. Professionals worked on laptops. Elderly couples browsed bookshelves. It felt safe, stable, hidden in plain sight. Sienna led Maisie toward a reading area overlooking the city through enormous glass windows. The girl seemed noticeably more relaxed. "Better?" Sienna asked. "Much better." For the first time all morning, Maisie looked like a normal 8-year-old again. She wandered toward a shelf of adventure novels while Sienna sat nearby. Her phone battery had dropped below 30%. She plugged it into a charging station and finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. What exactly was happening? A lost child. Stranja veiklas. An unreachable assistant. None of it made sense. A few minutes later Maisie returned carrying a book. "Can I sit here?" "Of course." The girl climbed into the chair beside her and opened the novel. For a while neither spoke. The quiet felt comforting. Then Maisie suddenly asked, "Do you ever miss someone so much that it hurts?" The question caught Sienna off guard. "Yes," she answered honestly. "Ido." Even years later? Sienna thought of her own father, gone for nearly a decade. Some losses never completely disappeared. They simply changed shape. "Even years later," she said softly. Maisie looked down at the silver star pendant. "I miss my mom every day." Sienna felt her heart ache. "I think she would be proud of you." "Why?" "Because you are brave." Maisie considered that answer carefully. "My mom used to say bravery is being scared and moving forward anyway." "Your mom was definitely wise." The girl smiled. Then she reached up and removed the pendant from around her neck. Before Sienna could react, Maisie placed it in her hand. "What are you doing?" Sienna asked. "Keeping it safe." "Maisie, this belongs to you." "I know." The little girl closed Sienna's fingers gently around the silver star. "But I trust you." Those 3 words landed with unexpected weight. Sienna stared down at the pendant resting in her palm. The metal felt warm from where Maisie had worn it all day. She opened her mouth to protest again when a notification suddenly flashed across her phone screen. "Breaking news. Missing child alert." Sienna's eyes widened. Slowly she opened the alert. The photograph appearing on the screen made her blood run cold. It was Maisie, and beneath the image was a headline that changed everything she thought she knew about the little girl sitting beside her. For a few seconds Sienna could not breathe. The words on the screen blurred together before snapping back into focus. Missing child. Maisie Pierce. A reward of $500,000 for information leading to her safe return. The photograph was unmistakable. The same blonde hair. The same thoughtful blue eyes. The same silver star pendant that now rested in Sienna's hand. Her gaze dropped to the line beneath the photograph. Daughter of Callum Pierce, founder and chief executive officer of Pierce Global Holdings. Sienna stared at the name. Even people who never followed business news knew who Callum Pierce was. His company owned office towers, technology firms, and real estate developments across the country. Financial magazines called him one of the most influential entrepreneurs in America. News channels followed his every move. Yet none of that mattered compared to one simple fact. The little girl sitting beside her was his daughter. Maisie noticed the expression on Sienna's face immediately. "You saw it, did you not?" she asked quietly. Sienna looked up. "Maisie," the girl lowered her eyes. "I did not tell you because people act weird when they find out. You are Callum Pierce's daughter?" Maisie nodded. "I am sorry." The apology broke Sienna's heart. Children should never feel responsible for other people's reactions. "You do not need to apologize. Most people stop seeing me after they hear my last name." Sienna thought about that for a moment. "Well, I met Maisie before I met a last name." A small smile returned to the girl's face. "Really? Really?" The tension eased slightly. Sienna looked back at the alert. More updates were pouring in. Local news stations were covering the search. City agencies were involved. Hundreds of calls had already been reported. Whoever was looking for Maisie was searching everywhere. "We need to contact your family," Sienna said gently. "Immediately." Maisie nodded but looked nervous. "Do you think my dad is worried?" Sienna almost laughed at the question. "Maisie, I think your father is probably the most worried man in Seattle right now." Before the girl could respond, several people across the library suddenly glanced at their phones at the same time. The alert had reached them too. Sienna's instincts kicked in. She carefully turned her phone screen off. "Come on. Where are we going?" "Somewhere quieter." They moved deeper into the library toward a less crowded section near the upper floor reading rooms. The city skyline stretched beyond the giant windows, gray clouds hanging low over the water. Once they were alone again, Sienna tried the assistance number for a third time. This time the call connected. A woman answered immediately. "This is Lauren Bennett." The relief in Sienna's chest was almost overwhelming. "My name is Sienna Hart. I think I have Maisie Pierce with me." Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "You what?" "She is safe." The response on the other end sounded almost emotional. "Oh, thank God." Voices erupted in the background. Sienna could hear phones ringing and people talking rapidly. "Where are you?" Lauren asked. Sienna gave the location. "Stay exactly where you are," Lauren said. "Please. Someone is coming." "Her father." Another brief pause followed. "Yes." The call ended. For several seconds neither Sienna nor Maisie spoke. Then the girl looked toward the rain-speckled windows. "He is going to be upset." No, Sienna shook her head. "He is going to be relieved." 20 minutes later the library entrance suddenly became unusually active. People in dark suits appeared near the front doors. Library staff exchanged curious looks. Visitors whispered among themselves. The atmosphere shifted. Not chaotic. Not threatening. Just charged. Like the air before a storm. Sienna knew immediately that someone important had arrived. Maisie stood so quickly her chair nearly tipped backward. Her eyes widened. "Dad." Sienna turned toward the entrance. A tall man stepped through the doors, his dark coat still damp from the Seattle drizzle. He moved with purpose, scanning the room with the focus of someone searching for the most important thing in the world. Then his eyes found Maisie. Everything else disappeared from his face. The authority, the power, the billionaire image seen on magazine covers. In that single moment he looked like only one thing. A father who had finally found his daughter. Callum Pierce crossed the library floor faster than Sienna would have thought possible. The moment Maisie ran toward him, he dropped to one knee and wrapped his arms around her. For several seconds neither of them spoke. The little girl buried her face against his shoulder while he held her as though letting go was no longer an option. Sienna looked away briefly, suddenly feeling like she was witnessing something deeply personal. Around them conversations softened. Even strangers seemed relieved by the reunion unfolding before their eyes. When Callum finally pulled back, he gently brushed a strand of hair from Maisie's face. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice was calm, but Sienna could hear the emotion underneath. Maisie nodded. "I am okay. Did anyone hurt you?" "No." "Were you scared?" The girl hesitated. "A little." Callum closed his eyes for a second. The answer clearly hurt more than he wanted to show. Then Maisie turned and pointed toward Sienna. "She stayed with me." For the first time, Callum looked directly at her. His blue eyes locked onto hers. Sienna immediately recognized the face from countless magazine covers and business interviews, but those photographs had never captured the exhaustion she now saw. The man standing before her looked as though he had aged years in a single day. "You are Sienna Hart?" he asked. She blinked. "Yes. Lauren told me." For a moment neither spoke. Then Callum extended his hand. "Thank you." Such a simple phrase. Yet the sincerity behind it caught her off guard. Sienna shook his hand. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Callum said quietly. "Most people would not." Something in his tone suggested he knew exactly how rare kindness could be. Before she could respond, several members of his team approached. Lauren Bennett, his assistant, was among them. The woman looked relieved enough to cry. She hugged Maisie, checked that she was unharmed, then immediately began coordinating calls and updates. The machine surrounding a billionaire had finally caught up to him.
Phonus rang.
Security personnel exchanged information. Messages flew back and forth. Yet through it all, Callum never seemed to take his eyes completely off his daughter. "Dad," Maisie suddenly said. "Sienna missed something important because of me." Callum looked at her. "What do you mean?" The little girl glanced toward Sienna. "She stayed with me all day." Silence followed. Not uncomfortable silence. Curious silence. Sienna immediately shook her head. "It is not a big deal." "What did you miss?" Callum asked. "Just a job interview." The words sounded insignificant when spoken aloud. Yet she felt the disappointment all over again. The weeks of preparation. The hope. The opportunity. Gone. "Sienna," Maisie whispered. "I am sorry." Sienna crouched beside her. "Do not apologize. None of this is your fault." But Callum had gone very still. He studied her face carefully, as if trying to understand something. "You missed the interview because you stayed with Maisie?" Sienna nodded. "She needed help." "And you did not know who she was?" "No." Another long pause followed. Callum glanced down at the silver star pendant around Sienna's fingers. "That belonged to my wife." Sienna looked at the pendant. "Maisie told me." His expression softened. "She does not let many people hold it." Before Sienna could answer, Maisie smiled. "I told you I trust her." The words seemed to affect Callum more than any business report ever could. He looked at his daughter, then back at Sienna. Something changed in his expression. Not gratitude. Not exactly. Something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. As if he had just discovered a person completely different from the people who usually entered his world. Outside the library windows, the rain began falling again over Seattle. Gray clouds rolled across the skyline while the city continued moving below. But for Sienna, the day already felt unreal. She had woken up worried about a job interview. Now she was standing beside one of the most powerful men in America. And judging by the way Callum Pierce was looking at her, she had a feeling this would not be the last time their paths crossed. Sienna left the library nearly an hour later with the silver Seattle rain falling gently around her. A black umbrella had been offered by one of Callum Pierce's assistants. She politely declined. Somehow accepting shelter from the billionaire's world felt like crossing a line she was not ready to cross. The city streets glistened beneath traffic lights as she walked toward the bus stop. Her phone vibrated. 2 new emails had arrived. The first was from Alder and Rowe Consulting. She already knew what it would say before opening it. They had moved forward with another candidate. The opportunity was gone. The second email hit even harder. Her landlord reminded her that rent remained overdue, and that payment was expected within 48 hours. Sienna closed her eyes for a moment. In less than 1 day she had lost a job opportunity and gained a story nobody would believe. She laughed softly to herself. Life had a strange sense of humor. That evening she sat alone in her small apartment eating instant soup while rain tapped against the window. The room felt even smaller than usual. A folding table served as a desk. A second-hand couch sat against one wall. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the corner. Yet her thoughts kept returning to one image. Not the security team. Not the headlines. Not even the reward notice. She kept remembering the look on Callum's face when he saw Maisie. Pure relief. Pure love. Around 8 o'clock her phone rang. An unknown number appeared on the screen. Sienna almost ignored it. Almost. Hello. Good evening, Miss Hart. The voice was familiar. Calm. Controlled. This is Lauren Bennett. Sienna sat up straighter. Hello. I hope I am not interrupting. No, a brief pause followed. Mr. Pierce would like to meet with you tomorrow. Sienna blinked. Why? To thank you properly. She immediately shook her head even though Lauren could not see it. That really is not necessary. With respect, Lauren replied gently. He disagrees. Sienna almost smiled. Somehow that answer sounded exactly like something a billionaire chief executive officer would say. I appreciate the offer, but I did not help Maisie expecting anything. We know. Another pause. That is precisely why he wants to meet you. The line went quiet. Sienna looked around her apartment. The peeling paint near the window. The stack of unpaid bills on the counter. The future she could no longer afford to ignore. Where? She finally asked. The next morning Sienna found herself standing inside the lobby of Pierce Global headquarters. Everything about the building felt enormous. Glass walls stretched upward 3 stories. Modern artwork filled the space. Executives crossed the polished floor carrying tablets and coffee cups. The entire building radiated confidence, success, power. Sienna suddenly became very aware of her modest navy blazer. Lauren greeted her personally and escorted her to a private elevator. You seem nervous, Lauren observed kindly. Should I not be? Lauren smiled. Honestly, most people are. The elevator opened onto the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Seattle skyline and Elliott Bay beyond. It looked less like an office and more like the command center of a small country. Callum stood near the windows reviewing documents. He looked different today. Less frantic. More composed. Yet there was still something tired behind his eyes. He set the papers aside when he saw her. Thank you for coming. You asked very persuasively. A faint smile touched his face. I am told that is one of my strengths. For the first time since meeting him, Sienna saw a glimpse of humor. Before she could sit down, a small voice echoed across the office. Sienna. Maisie appeared from an adjoining room and ran toward her. The little girl hugged her without hesitation. Sienna laughed in surprise. Then she noticed something. Callum was watching the interaction carefully. Not as a businessman evaluating a situation. Not as a billionaire measuring risk. As a father trying to understand why his daughter trusted a stranger so completely. And judging by the thoughtful expression on his face, he had not stopped asking himself that question since yesterday. Sienna spent the next hour inside Pierce Global headquarters, though it felt more like stepping into an entirely different world. After Maisie finally released her hug, the little girl insisted on giving her a personal tour of the executive floor. Callum watched the exchange with quiet amusement. I should warn you, he said. When Maisie decides she likes someone, she becomes very determined. I noticed, Sienna replied. That is the polite version, he said. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. It was the second time she had seen him smile, and somehow it transformed him. The intimidating billionaire from magazine covers disappeared, replaced by a man who seemed almost approachable. Maisie grabbed Sienna's hand. Come on. Within minutes they were walking through private hallways lined with photographs of company milestones. Yet what surprised Sienna most was not the success displayed on the walls. It was how little interest Maisie seemed to have in any of it. The girl was far more excited to show her a small art room tucked beside a conference suite. Paintings covered one wall. Colored pencils filled glass jars. Half-finished sketches sat on a table. This is my favorite place, Maisie announced proudly. You made these? Sienna asked. Maisie nodded. Dad says I got it from Mom. The mention of her mother softened the room instantly. Sienna studied one watercolor painting of a starry sky. You are really talented. Maisie beamed. Across the room, Callum quietly watched the interaction. The sight stirred something unexpected inside him. Since his wife's passing 4 years earlier, very few people had connected with Maisie this naturally. Most adults either treated her like a celebrity's daughter, or became nervous around the family name. Sienna did neither. She simply treated Maisie like a child who deserved kindness. Later, Lauren escorted Maisie to a tutoring session, leaving Sienna and Callum alone for the first time. The silence felt surprisingly comfortable. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Seattle Harbor beyond the office. Ferries moved slowly across the water beneath low gray clouds. Coffee? Callum asked. Sure. He poured 2 cups himself instead of summoning an assistant. Another unexpected detail. You know, Sienna said, you do not exactly match the image people have of you. Callum handed her a mug. Should I be concerned? Not concerned. Just surprised. He leaned lightly against the desk. What image is that? The ruthless billionaire who never sleeps. A genuine laugh escaped him. The never sleeping part is unfortunately true. The conversation flowed more easily than either expected. They spoke about Seattle, about books, about favorite places to escape when life became overwhelming. For nearly 30 minutes neither mentioned money, business, or headlines. Felt strangely normal. Then reality returned. Lauren told me about the interview, Callum said quietly. Sienna looked down at her coffee. It is fine. No, it is not. She shrugged. Life moves on. Callum studied her expression carefully. You gave up something important for a child you did not know. I helped someone who needed help. Most people calculate the cost first. His words hung in the air. Sienna could not argue with them. Too often kindness came with conditions. Well, she said softly, I guess I am bad at math. The comment earned another smile from him. Then his expression turned thoughtful. There is something I would like to offer you. Sienna immediately tensed. She already knew where this was going. If this is about a reward, I cannot accept it. I was not talking about a reward. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then what? Callum walked toward the window overlooking the city. A position. Sienna blinked. A position? Not a permanent position, Callum clarified. Lauren and our human resources team suggested bringing you in as a temporary consultant for 6 months. The foundation has several community outreach projects launching this quarter, and they believe your experience could be valuable. Sienna blinked. A consultant? A chance, Callum replied. Nothing guaranteed. Just an opportunity to see whether the work is a good fit for both sides. At the Pierce Foundation. The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. I have spent years funding programs designed to help people, he continued. But yesterday reminded me of something important. Compassion cannot be taught in boardrooms. Some people simply carry it with them. He turned back toward her. I think you are one of those people. Sienna stared at him, unsure what to say. Outside, rain streaked across the glass while ferries drifted through the harbor below. And for the second time in less than 48 hours, her future seemed to shift beneath her feet. The offer followed Sienna home long after she left Pierce Global Headquarters. Rain tapped softly against her apartment window that night while the city lights shimmered beyond the glass. A position at the Pierce Foundation. The words sounded impossible. Just 48 hours earlier she had been worried about missing a job interview. Now one of the most influential men in the country was offering her a chance to help lead charitable programs that reach thousands of people. Yet instead of excitement, uncertainty filled her thoughts. She knew what people would assume. They would say she received special treatment because of what happened with Maisie. They would say kindness had become a shortcut into a billionaire's inner circle. And somehow that bothered her more than she expected. The following morning she arrived at the foundation offices for a formal tour. Unlike the sleek corporate atmosphere upstairs, the foundation occupied a brighter, more welcoming space. Community photographs lined the walls. Local projects filled bulletin boards. Volunteers moved through the hallways carrying folders and coffee cups. Felt alive. Real. Sienna found herself liking it immediately. You look surprised, Lauren said as she walked beside her. I think I expected something different. Most people do. Lauren smiled. The foundation is probably the part of this company that matters most to Callum. Sienna glanced around. He seems very invested. Lauren's expression softened. After his wife passed away, he became even more committed to community programs. It gave him something meaningful to hold on to. The comment lingered in Sienna's mind. Later that afternoon, she attended a planning meeting for a youth literacy initiative. She was not even an employee yet, but the staff welcomed her opinions. For the first time in months, she felt useful again. Needed. As the meeting ended, she gathered her notes and headed toward the elevator. Voices drifted from a nearby conference room. She would have continued walking if she had not heard her own name. This is exactly why people question leadership decisions. Sienna froze. The voice belonged to a woman she had not met. Through the partially open door, she could see several executives seated around a table. One random encounter and suddenly she is being considered for a position, the woman continued. It looks unprofessional. Another executive shifted uncomfortably. Callum trusts his judgment. Trust is not the issue, the woman replied. Appearances matter. Sienna stepped back before anyone noticed her. Her stomach tightened. She knew she should not have listened, but the words still hurt. Every insecurity she had tried to ignore suddenly returned. Maybe she did not belong here. Maybe everyone assumed she was benefiting from a lucky coincidence. Maybe accepting the position would create problems for the very people trying to help her. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with someone rounding the corner. Sienna. She looked up. Callum stood there holding a folder. Everything okay? For a moment she considered pretending. Then she remembered something she admired about him. He always seemed to value honesty. Can I ask you something? Of course. She folded her arms. Why me? His expression remained calm. I already answered that. No. You told me I was compassionate. She met his eyes. But there are thousands of compassionate people in Seattle. Callum studied her for several seconds before responding. Do you know what my biggest challenge is? Running a billion-dollar company? Finding people who act the same way when nobody is watching. The answer caught her off guard. He continued. You helped a frightened child. Before you knew who she was. Before there was a reward. Before there was publicity. Before there was any reason to gain something from it. His voice remained steady. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could. The hallway fell silent. Sienna looked away toward the city visible through the windows. Deep down she knew he believed every word. Yet neither of them noticed the figure standing at the far end of the corridor, quietly observing the conversation before disappearing around the corner with a thoughtful expression and a phone already in hand. 3 weeks later, the Foundation's annual Community Stars Gala transformed the waterfront convention center into a sea of lights overlooking Elliott Bay. Guests filled the ballroom. Community leaders, volunteers, educators, and business executives gathered beneath shimmering chandeliers while soft music drifted through the room. Sienna stood near the edge of the crowd, still slightly uncomfortable in the elegant navy dress the Foundation staff had insisted she wear. Officially, she had accepted a 6-month position with the Pierce Foundation. Unofficially, she was still adjusting to the fact that her life had changed so dramatically in such a short time. Across the room, Maisie spotted her immediately and waved enthusiastically. The little girl hurried over carrying a small gift box wrapped in silver paper. You have to open this later, she whispered. It is important. Sienna laughed. Is that an order? Definitely. Before she could ask another question, the evening program began. Callum stepped onto the stage to polite applause. Dressed in a simple black tuxedo, he looked every bit the successful chief executive the world recognized. Yet Sienna had come to know another side of him. The father who left meetings early to attend school events. The man who quietly funded community centers without attaching his name. The person who checked on employees when they faced hardships. As he spoke about service, opportunity, and responsibility, Sienna noticed several large screens illuminate behind him. Images from Foundation projects appeared one after another. Food programs, literacy initiatives, housing assistance. Then suddenly a photograph filled the screens. A downtown fountain. An October morning. A frightened little girl sitting alone on a bench. A collective murmur moved through the audience. Sienna froze. She recognized the picture immediately. Another image followed. The public library. Then a photograph of a silver star pendant resting in an open palm. Callum's voice softened. A few weeks ago, my daughter became separated from our family during a frightening morning in the city. Thousands of people received alerts. Hundreds joined the search. But before any of that happened, one person made a choice. The ballroom grew silent. Sienna's heart began to pound. She had somewhere important to be. A future she was fighting for. Every reason to keep walking. Instead, she stopped. The giant screen shifted again. This time displaying a candid photograph of Sienna and Maisie seated together in the library. Gasps and smiles spread throughout the room. Sienna looked down, overwhelmed. That choice changed my daughter's day, Callum continued. But it also changed mine. Because it reminded me that kindness still exists when nobody is watching. He stepped away from the podium and looked directly at her. Sienna Hart, would you join me on stage? Applause erupted across the ballroom. Heat rushed to her face as she slowly stood. Maisie practically bounced with excitement. When Sienna reached the stage, Callum handed her a small velvet box. Confused, she opened it. Inside rested the silver star pendant. Her eyes widened. Maisie wanted you to have it tonight, he said quietly. As a symbol. Tears immediately filled her eyes. I cannot take this. You can, a small voice called out. Maisie appeared beside them. Mom said stars help people find their way home. The little girl smiled. You helped me find mine. There were not many dry eyes left in the room. Then Callum looked at her for a long moment before taking a careful step closer. The ballroom grew quiet again. 3 weeks is not enough time to know everything about someone, he said. But it is enough time to recognize character. Enough time to recognize kindness. His voice softened. The day you helped my daughter, you changed our lives. He smiled gently. I am not asking for forever tonight. A few guests exchanged curious glances. I am asking something much simpler. Sienna felt her heart race. Would you give us a chance? The room became completely silent. Would you let me take you to dinner? For a second, she simply stared at him. Then she laughed through tears. The tension melted instantly. Yes, she answered softly. Maisie clapped so loudly that half the ballroom laughed with her. Outside, beyond the glass walls overlooking Seattle, the evening sky sparkled with countless stars, and for the first time in a very long while, all three of them felt exactly where they belonged. If Sienna and Callum's journey touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness can change a life, and subscribe to Chosen by Love for more unforgettable billionaire romance stories. Your support helps us bring more emotional, heartwarming stories filled with hope, second chances, and true love. Join our growing family and never miss the next inspiring journey.